Hey guys, this is Lala Legacy and welcome back to another episode of SeaBed. So let's jump right back in. Could you hold it for me? Kozue placed her hands on the stool to steady it. I reached out to the lamp and seized its light bulb. I screwed it out of the socket and put it into my pocket. Then moved to the other light bulb from my mouth to my hand and screwed that into the socket instead. You're like an electrician. Actually, I got the qualification for this kind of work back in school. I'm the real deal. Really? I could fix almost anything when it comes to home electrical systems. My light keeps randomly turning off. You mean the light in your room? Yes. I'll give it a look once I'm finished with this one. Thank you. I stepped down from the stool and carried it to the next light. Once again, Kozue helped steady it for me. I climbed back onto my stool and reached under the lampshade. Sitting on the tripod, I unscrewed the seal on the ceiling. I pulled back a bunch of wires and found one with damaged insulation. The door opened as Kozue returned with Mayuko. How's it going? Mayuko asked, looking up at me from below. Those wires don't seem to be in very good condition. Rats might have gotten to them, or maybe they just deteriorated due to the salt in the air, but it'd probably be a good idea to call in a professional. I see. I returned the wires to their place and screwed the seal back on. Mayuko turned to Kozue. How long has it been since you moved into this room again? About half a year or so? I suppose it's the perfect time to change rooms then. Kozue nodded. Takako, I'll prepare a new room for Kozue, so in the meantime, could you help her pack? Sure thing! Thank you very much. Anyway, just give me a few hours. Mayuko left the room. Well then. I looked around the room with only a single bed and a lone shelf inside. A tripod stood in the middle, a few crumbles of plaster from the ceiling lying beside it. Kozue slid the glass partition on the shelf open and began taking out the books. I folded up the tripod. I'll bring the cleaning tools, so collect your stuff in one place for now. Kozue had very few things, only a handful of books and some clothes. She put everything into the small cardboard box Mayuko brought over and carried it to the other room with her. Meanwhile, I cleaned the empty room and decided to move back to the night duty room after finishing. Before closing the door, I turned around once and gave the empty room a quick look. A space that had been Kozue's just moments before now had no trace of her left. Where did you find it? Sanai raised her face from the book and gave the case I held a look. I borrowed it from Kozue's room. It was a transparent rectangular case filled with water, an old toy. It had colorful pictures of fish on it and a bunch of plastic red rings inside. On the bottom, there was a big plastic color. You could push the button to create water current and send the rings swirling around inside. I managed to get some on the coral. I pushed the button harder, wanting to get a ring that fell off to the side, but the strong current ended up sweeping the rings I'd already collected aside as well. Speaking of which room did Kozue move to? I think it was the corner room on the third floor of the western wing. I see. Sanai stared at me with her fingers stuck in her closed book. Is that book good? Yes. I'm only halfway through though. I'm only halfway through. But would you like me to tell you about it? No need. Just lend it to me once you're finished. Okay. Sanai nodded. Huh? You're hurt, Takako. She pointed at my elbow. Oh! Sanai took out a Band-Aid box from the closet by the bed. I guess I brushed it against something. How could you not notice something like that? Sanai stooped in front of me, ripping the Band-Aid seal off. I move around and get hurt a lot, so my brain probably doesn't even register small things like this anymore. I raised my elbow in front of her, which prompted Sanai to put a Band-Aid on it. You could use some exercise yourself, Sanai. I agree, but it's not so easy when you're small and frail like me. How about jogging? I get out of breath just climbing the stairs. If you want something effective but not too draining, then how about swimming? I don't know how to swim. Seriously? The sea's a rock throw away from here. People actually swim in there? Of course they do! Don't tell me you've never been to the sea before. What do you even do at the sea? Well, you can swim, beach volleyball, look for seashells and crabs, build sandcastles, or even collect glass stones. Stuff like that. Glass stones? Waves can sometimes make glass from sand, which results in translucent stones. Have you never seen any before? No. They come in different colors too. I remember collecting a whole bag of them when I was little. If you hold them out under the sun, they shine in various different colors. Sounds like it'd be very beautiful. Oh, it is! Back at my old place, I had them lined up against this, along with the seashells and are on a shoe cabinet. One of my relatives made this mosaic picture by sticking them to a canvas. I mean, it's not professionally or anything. It was more like part of a school project, I think. Either way, it was a scenery of colorful fish swimming in the blue ocean. Whenever I wanted to visit those relatives as a child, it'd be hanging above their shoe cabinet too. It was about this big too. I gestured with my hands, conveying the dimensions of a piece of A4 size paper. That sounds a bit like a stained glass window. Yeah, sort of. Honestly, I wanted to make something like that myself. But I'd only just now remembered it. You've been fond of creating things all your life, haven't you? Yeah, I even joined the pottery club back in elementary school. What did you make there? I remember making a vase and an ashtray. I didn't have enough clay, so my vase ended up too small to stick a flower in it. But I shaped it like a tulip instead, which turned out to look pretty nice, so I liked it. It was not me, but the teacher that made the final glazing, so it ended up brown. Makes me wonder if they just had no red dye at all. The ashtray was a present from my grandfather. I noticed that he didn't have one at home. He used it for quite some time after that. It always made me happy to see it on their table when I went to visit. A pottery club sounds like fun. It's nice to actually have something tangible after all your efforts. Did you make anything else? I guess I made a bookmark if that counts. You fill a little bucket with water and throw your watercolors in it. The colors mix in all sorts of patterns, and you get something cool looking if you let a piece of paper float and soak in it for a while. Oh, I remember doing that in the past. I also made a hand from paper mache. I remember doing that too. It's where you use some thick wires for the base skeleton, coil some string around that, and then add the paper mache, right? Yeah, that's right! We made masks, kites, and stamps from it. Back in school, I made stamps in carving class. I really liked how mine came out. I made it have a flower pattern. No matter how often the teacher warns you, there's always someone who gets hurt in that class. It's a bad idea to place your hand in front of the blade. Better safe than sorry is what you have to keep in mind in that class. I've yet to ever cut my finger, even with a kitchen knife. I showed her my hand. Isn't that just because you never cook? Hey, I do cook sometimes. I could even peel a potato with a knife. Then peel an apple for me next time. Sure thing. I took her on. For a moment, Sanaya's face looked like Mayuko's to me. Is something the matter? No. I just wondered about my position in this house. Huh? Anyway, yeah, I made a lot of things. Now that I think about it, I made more stuff than I could even remember. I wonder if children are still like that these days. I wouldn't know. We could ask Kozue about it later. For us, it might be a sweet memory, but for her, it's still school. I doubt she'll be able to consider it fun the way we do. Yeah, school ruins a lot of things. Some of my most boring classes made it feel like time had just stopped. Though we truly did touch upon a lot of things in school, didn't we? I mean, even if we're talking about art class, we made so many different things when we were there, but then life becomes far more monotone once you graduate. Yeah, I continued making things though. Now that you mention it, you worked as a designer, didn't you? Did you choose that career because you've enjoyed creating things ever since you were little? I guess it's partly that, but Sachiko enjoyed that kind of work too. If we were going out of our way to start new jobs, we figured we might as well choose something we could do together. Sachiko's really good at painting. She doesn't get as many avant-garde ideas as me, but I could never compare to her in terms of raw technique. I see you love her very much. Yeah. Anyway, would you like to go look for glass stones sometime? That sounds nice. We could decorate Kozue's room with them later. She had very few things. That's a good idea. Aww. I climbed all the way up to the third floor of the western wing, then continued down the corridor. I opened the door to the corner room. I'm coming in, Kozue! Kozue had yet to receive her room key from Mayuko, meaning it couldn't have been locked. Hey, don't come in without permission. Don't be a buzzkill! I'm not joking around, okay? Kozue regarded me with a reproaching look. I shrugged and asked what she was doing. I could see the vast golden sky peek through the window. Kozue had been stooping by the shelf next to it. Nothing. Did something happen? She began returning the tower of books she had by her feet to the shelf. Were you looking for something? The last thing she placed on the shelf before finally sliding the glass door shut was a sheep-shaped clay figure. I borrowed your toy with rings and fish, if that's it. That's not what I'm looking for. There was nothing in her room besides that shelf and a bag on her bed. Maybe you left it in the previous room. I'll go take a look. Can you tell me what this thing is exactly? Don't bother, it's nothing important. You don't need to be shy with me. It's something small enough to fit on the shelf, right? I left the room, not waiting for an answer. I vaguely heard her say that I didn't need to bother. I walked down the corridor, descended the spiral staircase, and emerged on the second floor. A large cloud was blocking the sun. The lights in the corridor lit up. Kozue's old room wasn't locked yet. With one hand still on the doorknob, I flipped the light switch. I waited for a few moments, but the room remained dark. Deciding to wait no longer, I stepped inside. As I let go of the doorknob, the door closed behind me. I could no longer see a thing. I took out the flashlight I'd prepared. A circle of light pierced the dark monochrome room, returning some color to the place. A bed with white sheets, an empty shelf with a glass door. The room hadn't changed since I left it at noon. I checked the floor, the ceiling, and finally the window, but found nothing. My light split as it hit the window, dissipating into the dark forest beyond. I pointed the flashlight at the bed again, inspecting it from top to bottom. The room suddenly lit up as the flashlight let out a loud click. Then the light disappeared completely. Wait! I shook the flashlight, but all it did was let out a weird buzzing sound. I clicked the button on the back of its shaft, removed its 3 batteries, changed them up, and returned them to their place. I pushed the light button again, but it still didn't work. Giving up, I slid the flashlight into my pocket and walked to the bed. I reached out to the silhouette I saw before the light vanished. My hand grasped only empty air. I instinctively drew my hand back and looked at it, but could only see the darkness. It was as though the silhouette had completely vanished. The window, through which the moonlight had illuminated the room moments ago, had disappeared as well. The room had completely lost its color, and even contours. I blinked and pressed my fingers against my eyelids. Upon opening my eyes again, I realized that nothing much had changed. Extending one hand to help me navigate, I made my way toward the wall. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. I shook my head and waved my hand around. The wall should have been within my reach, but once again my hand only grasped air. I took another half a step and stuck my leg forward. My toe suddenly touched something, making me stagger backwards. After steadying myself, I realized I could hear the wind. Cool, humid air caressed my cheeks. My ears rung as I gulped down the built-up saliva in my throat. For starters, I stuck out my right leg to examine the thing I had touched earlier. Through my slippers, it felt like a rock. When I grew conscious of that fact, I realized that my left foot was actually standing not on the floor, but a similar rocky surface. I took a step forward, trying to feel the ground below me. As I did, it lit up in dim, warped monochrome. I strained my eyes to realize I had been standing on volcanic rocks. I raised my face and lowered my hand, spotting a small light in the distance. It flickered in the darkness, looking like it could disappear at any moment. A gust of wind passed through the cave with a low-pitched howl. With careful steps, I began walking toward the light. As my eyes and ears began to grow accustomed to the area, I quickened my pace. I reached a puddle of water. As I raised my face, I saw someone by the light. Sachiko was sitting there with her back turned to me. "Sachi!" was what I tried to utter, yet my throat was too dry for me to make a sound. I quickened my pace. I looked up at Sachiko again as I hurried through the uneven rocky ground. Her straight long hair sparkled in the dim light. I could make out two eyes peering at me from above her shoulders. They belonged to a small face I couldn't quite make out in the dark. "Sachi!" The small mouth moved as though uttering that word. Sachiko slowly turned around. The light flickered. Takako! I opened my eyes to a starlit sky. "You'll catch a cold sleeping here." "Good morning!" I turned toward the direction of the voice to see Mayuko sitting on the edge of the bed with one hand placed on my shoulder. I moved my arm and heard it brush against the white sheets. "Mayuko, I think the batteries of this thing are dead." I took out the flashlight out of my pocket and handed it to Mayuko. "Really?" Mayuko turned the flashlight in her hands, and tried pushing the light button. The room lit up, making me reflexively close my eyes. "Seems to be working fine." "It didn't when I needed it." "Maybe the batteries are almost empty and it's gotten unstable now. I'll change them later just in case." "Yeah, do that please." I raised my upper body so I'd be at the same height as her. Growing dizzier by the second, I looked at Mayuko and the night sky extending behind her. Mayuko stood up, as though trying to escape my gaze. She turned around and closed the open window. "Why were you sleeping in a place like this?" I glanced at the door, noticing the bright corridor beyond it. "Kozue forgot something in here." "I checked the room after you cleaned it. There was nothing here." "I didn't find anything either." I turned and lowered my feet from the bed and into my slippers. "Are you going to Kozue's room?" "I have to tell her it wasn't in the room." We left the room together. Mayuko closed the door and locked it with the key from her pocket. But that is all the time that I have for this episode, guys. So if you liked it, please give it a big thumbs up down below. And if you haven't already, subscribe. By subscribing, you're becoming part of a legacy. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye!